All right, I'm pleased to be joined by Dylan Wu. He's in his second year on the PGA Tour. He's won one time on the Corn Ferry Tour, and he went to Northwest, won three times there in college. And Dylan, what's going on, man? How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
You got it, man. Well, listen, you're coming off of a December where you get married and you go to the Swiss Alps, and now you're in Hawaii. I mean, does life get any better?
Yeah, I mean it's been pretty busy lately. But honestly, since the day of the wedding, I feel like it's been great. I feel like the planning going into it is a lot of stress. So honestly, the honeymoon was awesome, and then yeah, really excited to start the season again this week in Oahu here. It's hard to beat Hawaii in January. It's pretty nice here.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get to Sony in a minute and where you are in Hawaii. But I'm interested. You're a foodie. You're a big time foodie, and you love your wine. So, was there anything in Switzerland where you and your wife Margaret went to? Was there anything special about that? Obviously, you got some Swiss chocolate, I imagine, but anything
Yeah,
come to mind?
Yeah, so our honeymoon was basically 2 weeks. We actually started in Paris, went to Germany, and then went to Switzerland for 6 days. Uh, we
Not
ate,
bad.
I ate a lot of pastries. I'll say the entire trip. It was great. Did drink a decent amount of wine. Had a lot of tried some more French wines while I was in Europe. Honestly, being in Paris and then also in Switzerland and everything. I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna be drinking wine, I might as well try some Bordeaux and some Burgundies, which was great. Just because I feel like it's a little easier to try a little older wines in Europe versus
Yeah.
when you go to a restaurant in the US and you try to get most of the say a Napa Cab, you're trying like a 2018, 2019, and if you want to spend a lot of money, you can try like a 2013, 2014. So it was great. Ate a lot of food. I definitely gained a lot of weight over there. Just the one good thing about going to Europe, say when it's colder in the winter, it's just like, oh, I'll put an undershirt on, a sweater, and then just a parka on. That's my outfit every day, basically. So then I can just eat whatever I want. But we really enjoyed the trip. It was great. We went to a lot of Christmas markets over in Germany and Paris and Switzerland. We're big fans of that. My wife and I loved doing that when we were in Chicago at the Christkindl market. It's basically like glue wine, which is like mulled wine, like nuts, bratwurst, and all these food that are not that great for you, but great for the holidays. So it was really really fun. But we ate at a Michelin star restaurant in Switzerland at Zermatt, right next to the Matterhorn, and it was awesome. It was great. I mean, the food was great. I mean, the one thing I was surprised with, like in Europe, the hotel breakfast and hotel like room service in Europe, 10 times better than in the US. Like
Why
hotel
is that?
breakfast, I don't know. Like I was just like, hotel breakfast is good. I'm like, all the pastries are good. Like the service is good. I'm like, wow, this is completely different. And then when you think of American breakfast, you think of like the Holiday Inn Express and stuff like that, and like cinnamon rolls or just really bad eggs or something like that. But like the breakfast in Europe is great. So no, it was great. A really fun trip.
Yeah, actually, you're right. I remember I was lucky. I had a honeymoon in Italy with my wife like 7, 8 years ago, and I remember the breakfast. Like you would sit there, you could sit there for an hour, and you just keep the
Oh,
food coming, just keep it
yeah.
coming.
Yeah, it's like there's no reason to go out to eat because like the food's just as good. Like I was eating in Paris the first day. I was like, oh, do I have to go out to breakfast somewhere? I'm like eating, and there's like croissants and all these pastries, and I'm like, these are good. Like these are solid. Like I would buy these, and I was just kind of surprised by that. And this, I think that's the one thing. Like in Europe, like the services at the hotels and everything, like the experience they want you to have is really good. Versus in the U.S., it's like, yeah, just stay here. Basically, just stay at the hotel out.
Yeah, hospitality. There's a lot of other things going on there in Europe for sure. Well, you're in Hawaii now, so I got to ask you. I know that Ryan French, a case of the golf one on Twitter, he was mentioning that you were on the 14th hole when you got a call that
Yeah.
you were in the tournament. Right, you were an alternate. You started this week as an alternate for Sony Open. So when you get that call, what does that feel like?
Feels great. I mean, I woke up Monday morning at an early tea time, I think 8 a.m. But I woke up and I saw that I moved to first alternate. I'm like, first alternate Monday morning, pretty good chance of getting in. But I was like, I've taken a long time off, got married and everything, and I'm like, my game feels good. Like I played back home in Scottsdale, I was playing well, but I'm like, it's a little different playing well at home versus in a competition, even a Monday qualifier. So I was like, let me just try to embrace today and try to grind, hopefully play well, and then just it'd be good reps, hopefully getting into the tournament. And like I honestly didn't play that bad, but I just was not scoring. Like hitting shots where like hit decent shots, not make the putt, then you hit one bad like okay shot, kicks into the face of a bunker. I'm like, all right, this is cool. Like this just shows like golf can be a little unforgiving. But it was great. I was literally when you're playing not that great, I was like in between shots. I was like, we're waiting. It's slow. I was in the twosome with YE Yang. We're just hanging out, but like on a tee box, like we have a threesome in front of us. Like I was like, oh, I'll just take out my phone to check if I moved in, and I was like on the green, my 14th hole, and I had my phone in my pocket at this point because I was 3 over par. So right before I'm about to putt, I feel my phone vibrating, and I'm like, oh, I look down and it says PGA Tour on, and I'm like, oh, this is a good call. So I was pretty pumped to get in. I actually played one more hole after that. It's like the hardest hole in the course, like a 490-yard par four into the wind water. It's my only birdie, only birdie of the day. So
Of course.
maybe, yeah, just the way golf is, right? Trying just trying less. Like, oh, I got in, then make a birdie. But it was great, especially getting in on Monday versus say on Tuesday and stuff like that. Just because it just helps the preparation and everything. You feel it was weird. Like yesterday, I was 3 over at one point in the Monday qualifier. Then as soon as I got the call, I drove over to Wiley and I was hitting on the range right next to Jordan Spieth. I'm like, that doesn't really make sense, but that's the way golf is sometimes. Especially me being in the 126 to 150 category this year, that conditional category. Some tournaments I might be an alternate and might get in last minute. So it's kind of just be prepared for that uncertainty and just seize the opportunity when you can. So no, I'm excited to be playing this week. I played decent here last year.
Yeah, top
Finished
20, your
20th.
first.
So, yeah. So it's a great spot. I mean, I like Hawaii. So looking forward to another great week.
Well, you got your first top 20 as a PGA Tour player as a member there last year, as you're talking about. So I'm curious, like, what for the audience at home that watches on TV, what's something that might surprise you if you're there in person at Wiley?
It's very, very, very firm. Like for Hawaii, you think of island golf, you think of like kind of the ball just kind of splats usually because like it's like when we play in Bermuda and some other places, like it's pretty soft, but the course is actually very, very firm. It's a good golf course. It's an old school golf course that hasn't been really changed much at all. I think it's the 25th year they've hosted it. I think it's the 25th anniversary. I think I saw on a bunch of signage here at the Sony. But it's just I mean, it's a good golf course. It's a good test of golf. If it gets really windy, that's when it gets really tough. Just because it's kind of narrow. Like it's a position golf course. It may look kind of open on the tee, like on camera and everything, but it's pretty narrow, especially when it gets firmer, just because it's harder to hold the fairways. The rough is decently high this year. The greens aren't super firm, but they're decently quick. Especially quick when you've taken some time off. Most courses back in the US aren't rolling very fast. But yeah, it's just a good golf course. I think a lot of guys like it. Say it takes driver out of the player's hands more than other courses, just because some holes get narrow and it's really hard to kind of hold the greens when you're in the rough. So it's not you can't really overpower the golf course. I mean, you can tell, like, I think Russell Henley and Hideki were in a playoff last year at 20 under. I feel like last year it was like a more favorable wind than when I played today. It's a good golf course. Yeah, no, I think people like it a lot. The one cool thing about the clubhouse, the food usually in dining in a PGA Tour event is usually a buffet and everything, but here it's like a restaurant. It's like the restaurant inside. You order off a menu, and it's like good Hawaiian food. So I know a lot of guys like it a lot.
One for you as a foodie. I mean, you're just in heaven, I'm sure.
Exactly.
It's funny when I think about, obviously it was Monday qualifier that you played in this week to obviously competing, but you're no stranger to that. You Monday qualifiers, you played, actually met you there at the US Open qualifier there at Woodmont in Maryland when you made it through to your first US Open. And I'm just curious, like, you've mentioned in the past, there's a couple real big Monday qualifiers, and you think of, especially with the West Coast coming up, there's Torrey is always a big one. You said Torrey, and then of course Phoenix as well. What makes those two really unique Monday qualifiers?
I think it's just early in the year. Like the Corn Ferry hasn't started yet. Sometimes, like it's where like the guys who have conditional status, like the Corn Ferries in like in Colombia, Panama, like you can't really do qualifiers. There's no qualifiers there. So then the guys who have conditional status on Corn Ferry will all play the Monday qualifiers for farmers and waste, and they just want to be. Those events are great. I mean, you're playing the waste management this year. It's an elevated event. It's for 3 spots, but there's times where like it's 150 people signed up for 3 spots, and
That's crazy.
it's like if you get an afternoon tea time, you're probably not gonna make it. And the nature of Monday qualifiers, like I was just talking about this on like in the practice round on Sunday with a couple buddies. I was like, whoever created Monday qualifiers is kind of just a mean person. It's like Monday qualifiers are so hard. Like I think Brooks Koepka and like Jordan were talking about. It's like this guy is like Scotty Scheffler and Will Zalatoris. I think Ryan French always talks about this. Like they all try to do the Monday qualifier for the Utah Corn Ferry one year, shot 6 under and missed by like 2 or 3. It's just like Monday qualifiers are a crapshoot. Like you don't give trophies on the PGA Tour for one round. Like it's 72 holes. You need it for 4 times, but kind of a lot. There's a lot of players that can catch a heater one day, and I think that's why you see like say why some people once they Monday qualify they don't necessarily play well in the tournament. Like I'd say like especially if they're a non-member, just because it's completely different. I mean, you're playing a different golf course. It's usually more tournament conditions. Sometimes when you play a Monday qualifier, the courses are pretty easy because all the section really wants is making money. So they might charge you $100 to play a practice round at like a mediocre golf course, but like they're making money. And it's not necessarily the best test of golf for the tournament. Hawaii is actually a great Monday qualifier because it's at a country club. It takes like a good score. Usually, like I think when I did it a couple of years ago, well, I think last year 2 under got through because it was windy. 4 under in the playoff a couple of years ago. 4 under was in the playoff yesterday. It was in a big playoff because the weather was kind of good. But like 4 under being in a playoff is kind of unheard, or like that means the course is harder. Versus like I played the Shriners Monday qualifier. That's one of my. It's the only time I Monday qualified for a PGA Tour event. Was at the Shriners a couple of years ago. I shot 63 9 under. Me and another guy shot it, and then there was I think it was an 8 for 2 playoff at 8 under par. It's like, okay, if you shoot 7 under par, you have no chance of doing that. It doesn't really. It's not the best way to like analyze your golf just because you can be on that Monday qualifier grind and shoot 5 under, 6 under, and you don't get anything. So it's kind of its own beast a little bit. But yeah, I was glad I played yesterday, got some reps in, and kind of learned from what I was doing kind of wrong or just not playing well, just not scoring. So it kind of was like a wake up call, which was nice, just because I think some people who would be first alternate be like, yeah, I'll just skip the Monday qualifier, take my chances because you'll probably get in. But
but
I
you
just
never
thought,
know.
yeah, you never know exactly. But I just took it as an opportunity, just like, hey, it's another competitive round. While I'm here, let me practice and play, and it'll help me when I get into the tournament.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, so you've made it through one PGA Tour, but then of course one U.S. Open as well. So those are the two big Mondays when it comes to the highest level, right? That you've gotten through.
Yeah, U.S. Open's probably it's its own beast because it's 36 holes.
Yeah,
That's the only one you see a lot of people withdraw. That's actually last year at Woodmont. I was playing okay. It's on Monday, and I remember I had to go to Canada after. I'm like, it's 36 holes. I'm going to Canada for the RBC Canadian. I'm like, I'm played 29 holes right now, and I know I'm probably not going to make it. This is probably when I should withdraw. And that's like the first time I've ever withdrew in a tournament. When I was like on my own, like in my career, and I felt weirded out by it because I usually love finishing it out. Like even yesterday when I got the call, I was playing with Wai Yang, and I was like, oh, I made a birdie. Let me play the last 3 holes. And we were kind of waiting, and Wai's like, no, I'm gonna go in right now. And I'm like, the clubhouse is kind of close here. I'll go in then.
you talked me into it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, U.S. Open sectionals is that's a different beast too because it's 36 holes. That's a grind. That's I feel like in U.S. Open sectionals at least it's like it's 36 holes is a better way to show who's at the very top or who deserves to qualify versus 18 holes. That's why like USAM qualifying when you're in college was like super big because the USAM qualifying was 36 holes. I think that's a show, like it just shows who's the better golfer over more holes. 18 holes is just, you can just get hot one day. Versus even in US Open sectionals, it's one day, but it's a long day. I mean, you have to play well for 9, 10 hours. And it's a grind. And then the US Open's not like a month later, it's like a week and a quarter later, and it could be
Right.
across the country. It's like, oh yeah, you got into the US Open, you gotta change all your plans and go there. It's like, oh,
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Speaking of the U.S. Open, you made it through. That was the first major you ever played. You finished tied for 31, but you know what? You got into that top 10 at one point on Saturday. You know what I mean? So you were playing some pretty darn good golf. What did that feel like for you to really be in the mix?
yeah, it was weird. I always tell people, I'm like, looking back at that, I'm like, it was a weird tournament because being my first major, I felt like the entire week I wasn't nervous. It was weird. Like I've been nervous playing in money games at home. Like if I've taken some time off or to make a putt or something or hitting my first tee shot somewhere, like I feel like I've been more nervous. And like the US Open, I was like playing well. Like I saw my name on Friday, I was like in T second at one point when I was starting my second round and like playing well on Saturday a little bit. And I was like just thinking to myself, I'm like, this just feels like I'm playing just a casual round a little bit. Like I loved it. It was great. It was a really cool experience playing at the US Open, just to experience the conditioning and playing against the best players in the world. Um, but that's the one thing I took from it. I'm like, wow, my nerve for some reason that week, the biggest tournament I've ever played, I was completely calm. And it's not always like that. So that's the one thing that was really cool about that week was like, oh, yeah, it was just felt super chill even on the first tee. Like at the first tee of a major championship, you think like, oh crap, let's hit this fair. Let's try to put a good swing on this. But no, it was really fun. I feel like that kind of kickstarted my year in 2021 to play well the rest in the Corn Ferry and get my card. So I look back at that moment, the US Open, as a yeah, a big milestone in my short career so far.
Yeah, and obviously being a big moment there. But then now I think now that you're into your second year, you're into the wraparound season here. What are some of your goals, and what have you learned about yourself that you're going to now transfer over here to this rest of the way?
Yeah, the PGA Tour is changing like the way they're doing their playoffs and everything. So like instead of the top 125 making it to the playoffs, the top 125 will still be like fully exempt, but the top 70 will make it say to the what's the first playoff event? I forget it's not the Northern Trust, what's it called? I forget. Not the BMW, but like the one
Oh yeah,
Met,
the Fed,
FedEx PGA.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so
exactly.
that'll be 70 players instead of 125. So I think, of course, like some of the small goals I have. I mean, big goals. I would love to win. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Love to make it to St. Jude, finish in the top 70, just because like I'm grateful to be in the 126 to 150 category this year. Um, but like when you're in that category and you played well, and when you get into a new category in the top 70 or you win a tournament, it just kind of gets easier knowing what tournaments you can play. You can play bigger events and kind of pick your schedule. I'm still at the point where like I'm basically I'm a little worse than a rookie, and I kind of just have to play anything I get into and do that until I can play my way out of it, which is fine. It's a good problem to have because you're on the PGA Tour. Um, but I think this year, last year, I feel like I learned a lot as a rookie. I feel like I played a lot of decent golf. I just didn't really finish it out. I had a lot of tournaments where I made the cut and finished like between 40th and 55th, which doesn't really get you much in points and stuff like that. So I kind of think this year, I think I want to have the mindset of kind of being, I was just talking to my mental coach about this before, like kind of being hungrier and just not being okay with like complacency or being okay with where I am or with my results. Just always wanting more. And just having that self confidence that I know I'm a great player and I can compete against the best in the world. Um, and just having that drive. I feel like on the PGA Tour, especially the way they advertise on the Corn Ferry, it's like, oh, you got your PGA Tour card, you've made it. It's like, no, you haven't made it. You still have to play really well to do everything. But that's the way they kind of the media markets it. It's like, oh, you got your PGA Tour card, you've made it. It's like, no, if you play bad, you'll lose it and you'll go back. Um, so I think it's just the things I want to do this year, just kind of small goals. Like other small goals are just kind of making sure I kind of seize every day and seize every opportunity and really just kind of put my head down and work really hard, and not be okay with just mediocrity, honestly. Like not being okay with like, hey, I'm on the PGA Tour, it's all great. It's like, no, you need to just having like wanting more. And I think that comes with like playing well, like all 72 holes, just having a little more consistent results. I want to put myself in like more late tee times on Sunday. Get the juices flowing. I mean, the only time the juices really get flowing in professional golf, or in professional golf for me at least, are like when I'm on the cut line, first tee shots probably, and then when you're in contention. And honestly, those are the only times that you get like nervous energy a little bit. So trying to like get more of that by putting myself in better positions in more tournaments. And I think I'll do a better job this year, just being my second year and everything. I'll be a little more comfortable, but honestly, like even though it's your second year and you've experienced more, it's like golf is golf. There's plenty of rookies last year that played really, really well. Like I mean, you had Cameron Young, my best buddy Davis Riley, Sahith. Like they're rookies. They're seeing the course for the first time, but they're playing great. It's like golf is still golf. Like good golf is good golf, no matter what level you're on. So, yeah, those are just kind of the things I want to do this year. Like I'm grateful to be on the PGA Tour, but I know that I can be a top player, and I think it's just making sure I work hard every day to try to make that possible. Because you really haven't made it until you win a PGA Tour event and you set your schedule, you get in the top 50 in the world, and you still haven't made it then. I mean, you make it when you maybe are 40, 45 and you play on the tour for 20 years or something like that. But I think it's just those are the small things. Not being okay with being just like an average PGA Tour player. You just want to keep on setting goals for yourself and just wanting more.
Well, speaking of the small things, what kinds of things have you been working on with the swing at the moment?
Yeah, so I actually decided after Corn Ferry Finals last year to go back to my Northwestern coach on my entire game. So
Wow.
before I was last year, I was working with him only on short game, like wedge game, short game, and putting. And then I decided to move back to him on like my entire game, basically my full swing. That's the only thing I added. Just because he was the reason. My coach at Northwestern, Pat Goss, was the reason I went to Northwestern. He's a great coach. Coach Luke Donald is a really good short game coach, but I feel like he knew my game really well, like knew my golf DNA. And I feel like it'd be easier with him to kind of work on things and just slowly get a little better and better versus kind of just tinkering a little bit. My old coach, who I worked with for about a year and a half, 2 years, Jeff Smith, great guy, works with a lot of tour pros like Victor Hovland, Davis
Yeah.
Riley, Wu, Aaron Wise, Patrick Rogers, like great guys who are great ball strikers. I love Jeff. He was great. I feel like I learned a lot. Just feel like it wasn't the right fit for me a little bit. I feel like for me, the way I swing it, it's a little more unique. I have more unique matchups, and I feel like Pat, just having that experience at Northwestern for 4 years, and I worked with him afterwards for about 2 years on my swing. He just knows my golf swing very, very well, the ins and outs, and knows my tendencies. And I felt like that was a big decision for me, and I feel like I've already seen progress on it since working with him. So that's been good. Those are some of the small things I'm working on in my swing, and then
Just look,
what do you say?
progressing with like your grip and like small adjustments. I know you talked about
We're
having
just doing
a weak grip in the past, but
Yeah, the one thing I'm working on right now is just kind of adding stability in the downswing. The one thing I do is like my weight shift kind of goes too much to my toes, which kind of gets me unstable. That's where I feel like I can't really complete my backswing well enough. Then in transition I get to my toes, and that's when you kind of like hit a lot of toe draws. You hit pull hooks when you're off balance a little bit. So just adding a little more stability to my swing, being a little more patient, or some of the things we're working on. Just trying to get the club. I feel like when I'm patient and a little more stable, I get the club more on plane instead of over shallowing it, and then I'm able to hit the ball a little higher, less knuckly, like a little more spinny. Just have a little more control over the golf ball. So those are the things I'm working on with him.
There like
Then
a thought? Is there a thought in your brain as you're going over the ball to help you get that patient feel?
yeah, I just kind of feel like everything kind of settles at the top. It's not like, oh, I'm like, it's not like I need to hit a certain position. Like, I feel like we've worked enough on my setup and kind of takeaway that it's just like a body movement now. Like, kind of like the feeling I have right now is like letting everything settle a little bit where the club like almost stops, even though I know it won't for me, but like kind of feeling like Hideki where like everything stops. And then the one thing I feel in transition right now is kind of sitting like if there's like a chair behind me, like sitting, so like I'm pushing into the ground versus like pushing into my toes where my weight goes forward. Because when if I push into my toes and the weight goes forward, the club gets too shallow and underneath, and that's where I get swing too much from the inside, and then that's where you can hit too much of those pull draws that nobody likes to hit. But those are some of the things I'm working on with him.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you look at you mentioned some of your other peers. So you think about Davis Riley, Sahith Theegala, guys that playing really well. But a friend of yours for a long time was Colin Morikawa, a guy you went to war with against in college golf. And it's interesting. Is there a story from your time in college golf, or even since then, that was funny between you and Colin?
Yeah, I mean, I've met Colin when I was, I think, 13, maybe 12 or 13. We were playing a junior all-star tournament in HAGA. I think we played a practice round together. Then I had a lot of buddies go to Cal. I almost went to Cal. Like, honestly, it was probably my second school behind Northwestern. So we could have definitely been teammates. I had lunch with him last year when I was in between tournaments in Vegas. He's just a good guy. I mean, he's a world-class talent. I mean, people ask me who are the best players you play with, and at Torrey when I played in the U.S. Open, played a practice round with Colin. It was me and him. And the next day I played with Victor
Hovland?
Hovland, Francesco Molinari. But honestly, Colin, like his ball striking is probably one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. Like he's probably one of the best, probably the best ball striker I've seen. And like I was looking at his stats, like I was watching the coverage last week, and they're like, yeah, he didn't have that great of last year, and like last year he was third in strokes gained approach. I'm like, he said last year he wasn't like hitting that cut he wanted, and I'm like, you're third in strokes gained approach when you're not swinging it like great. I'm like, that's absolutely insane, especially nowadays with golf being so hard and like the highest level is just getting higher and higher. Um, but no, he's a good guy. I mean, he's a great dude. I mean, he's super humble, but he's smart and he's also a foodie. So I think that's the one thing we do like is like we enjoy eating good food. Because I think there's definitely some players that don't care for it. I mean, that's the one thing I love about traveling is like in Hawaii this week, I'm gonna eat a bunch of Hawaiian food. Like I think he's the same. Like he was in Maui. I think he talks about that in some of his interviews, like eating like acai bowls or poke bowls and stuff like that. I love like I love Hawaiian food. I love sushi. I love poke. I love like short ribs and stuff like that. All the Hawaiian dishes. I mean, it seems like all the Hawaiian dishes here are like not that great for you. It's usually fried or yeah, fried or golden. But yeah, he's just a great guy. I mean, we played some practice rounds together. He's always a guy like when I was on the Corn Ferry and when he started really well on the PGA Tour, um like send me some messages like rooting for me and like some other guys, like all of us college guys who played against each other around the same age, like we're all rooting for each other because it kind of seems like we're this it's the same as playing in junior golf or college golf. We're the same. Like we grew up at the same time and played alongside each other in college. But yeah, he's a great dude. I mean, you see nowadays, like I'm 26. It seems like there's a lot of us that are around the same age on the PGA Tour. It seems like it's just getting younger and younger. But yeah, it's been great knowing him and I think last year we had one. I think I played Valspar, and I'm like, yeah, this is probably like we've been already halfway through the season, the PGA Tour season, and this is the first tournament I've seen you at. Just because we have different schedules. When you're that good, you play a different schedule.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah, it is crazy. But he's a great guy. I mean, there's a lot of great guys in the PGA Tour. I think that's the one thing that you'll see is like no matter how good some players get, there's still guys who are just good human beings that are just normal dudes. um, that'll do like just normal things. Like they say, like Scotty Scheffler still drives his like pickup truck from college.
Yeah.
Like when you're that level and you're having that much success, you can drive whatever you want. But those small things are, I mean, it just shows yeah, I mean, professional athletes are still normal people sometimes.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting. Speaking of normal people, you got just a normal person on the bag for you. Your younger brother Jeremy, and what is that like? I mean, you guys went through a whole season of being on the PGA Tour together, seeing places for the first time. I mean, how cool is that to share that with your brother?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I always joke around that, like, yeah, I saved his ass. Basically, he was working at EY in tax accounting, and not really liking it that much. And he watched me at the U.S. Open at Torrey. You know, I had a caddy at the time, and I was like on the edge of maybe trying to change things up. And then I told Jeremy that he could try one event in Portland, Maine, and we played decently well. It was a week after the U.S. Open, and he didn't really do that much because he always jokes around like, if I knew what I knew now as a caddy back then, I feel like I would have done a better job. I remember like look, we were joking around like looking at his notes from the first time he caddies for me, and they're like the most generic notes ever. Like aim slightly left here, or it's like something like that off the tee.
Okay.
Um, but he's been great. I think the one good thing that we've done, I think, is like I feel like it's really easy to like spend too much time with another person, no matter who it is. I mean, I feel like your spouse is like kind of the only person you should do that with, because especially with siblings and everything. But like last year, I think we played 25 to 27 events. I think we stayed together 3 times. So that made it nice, like where I'm not like seeing you every single time, every single moment throughout the day. Because sometimes I want him to be my brother, sometimes I want him to be my caddy, where I'm his boss. So it's just kind of balancing that structure. But it's great. I feel like there's certain things you can say to a brother versus, and he won't take it personally versus another person, just because they kind of know how you think and everything. So he's been great. I feel like we're slowly figuring out like the right formula that works for me to play my best. I do though think that whenever he comes to caddy for me in a Monday qualifier, I play terrible. So I think he's probably not going to. If I have to play Monday qualifiers, he'll skip those. It's weird. I think we've played like 4 or 5 Monday qualifiers together, and I played terrible in all of them.
It's
Which
his
is
fault. Totally his
yeah,
fault.
exactly. You always got to blame the caddy. Somebody's got to get the blame. But it's great now. No, it's been great. It's weird to think that he's been on the bag for a year and a half already. Doesn't seem like that long, but it's been a lot of events. But I know he likes it out here. He's a good caddy now. Um, he, yeah, I mean it's been great to share that success and have um, yeah, those good moments with your family. So yeah, it's been great having him.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You're at the PGA Tour level now, and when you look at the other tours around the world, you see LIV Golf came out of nowhere last year and kind of overtook the scene. What do you make of kind of what they've established, and as a young player, when you see something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember first hearing the rumors to live. I was like, it's kind of skeptical and everything. But honestly, like looking at it now, like they made a huge dent in like the golfing world. Honestly, they took a lot of big names. Um, and I think it's just the balance. Like the one thing right now, it's pretty being a person in my shoes, being a PGA Tour member, it's a pretty good time to be a PGA Tour golfer or being a golfer at a high level, just because there's certain changes I think that golf is making to cater more towards the players. You know, like other sports, you have owners and stuff like that, but players are getting guaranteed stuff. And golf, people don't even realize like normal people don't even realize that we have to pay for our hotel, our caddy, and everything we do every single
Yeah.
week. Like really, so this week at Sony, there's 144 people, 65 in ties make the cut. So you'll say maybe okay, half the people will make money or do better than break even, and then half the people will lose a couple $1,000s. And it just doesn't work like that in other sports. When you're at the highest level, like the PGA Tour is the highest level. Like you'd say, like the 144 players here, they're the top 250 players in the world. If you have any other sport, no matter how bad, like some guy on the bench for the Lakers, some of that plays, like they're still getting guaranteed. So I think just understanding that, like, you see all this money in professional sports and professional golf, like with Tiger and everything, but it's like you still have to play well for it. Like, so I think that's like the balance the PGA Tour and the golfing world is balancing now, is like making sure players are getting compensated, like rightfully so. Because the PGA Tour is a great product, and like it's broadcasted internationally, and like every business kind of wants to partner with the PGA Tour. I mean, you see the the biggest corporations in the world, like their CEOs, they probably play golf. Like everybody loves golf. Golf's a very has a like that rich sport, a lot of money. So I think that's the shift that you've seen a little bit, is the purses are going up, everything's going up.
Sorry about that. My thing closed out. My bad. But you
No,
were
no
just
worries.
my bad. And I'll wrap up here in a few minutes. But you were just saying that comparing PGA Tour and Live and how it's just the guaranteed money, like the difference in all that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, last, like now, if you play in a live and you finish last, you're making 120 grand. It's just crazy, which is crazy. It's just like, I remember looking at a stat last year. It's like DJ in his first year on live made more money than Xander Schauffele's career. Like Xander Schauffele's a great player right now, and he's young still, and he's like, that's crazy to hear. So I think it's weird, because I think it's kind of affected the product of golf. Like honestly, I feel like you have this divide in golf where people don't want to watch it as much because you have this like live PGA talk so much. And honestly, I feel like with the PGA Tour, like I don't mind the guys leaving to live, but it's like kind of hard to say like, hey, you guys left to live, you took all this money and everything, like it's great, but like don't try to come back and play PGA Tour events a little bit. Just because you're trying to like cut out of both pies. Like I'm fine with guys who, like, if your world ranking's high enough, like playing in your majors and stuff like that. Like at the Masters, there's gonna be like 15 to 20 live guys playing it this year.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
but it's weird. I feel like with live they could do a different. I don't know how it's gonna work in the future with them coexisting, because I feel like live with their unlimited war chest like is gonna be around for a little bit. Just because they make so much money. But I feel like the live product could have changed a little bit so they could have catered to getting world ranking points, and like, I mean, you could basically make live golf world golf championships. You could make a 72 player field, 4 days, guaranteed money. That's basically what a golf championship was in the past.
Yeah.
Um, so it's honestly like, I think live side could have done a better job of doing that. And the PGA Tour probably should have did something a little better of like maybe working on something to like merge it together, not seeing it so much as a threat, but like, hey, like what if we just do this to make the entire golfing, professional golf, PGA Tour, which is the highest level, better? Like let's, because I mean, if I just feel like it could have been a little better versus just going at each other. Um, but I don't really know how it's going to work in a couple of years. Like I feel like now you have like the top players, they have to play these elevated events, right? Like they're basically forced to play in these in order to get all their PIP money. Um, which is weird, because then you have like the top players playing this certain schedule, and then you have like the rest of the PGA Tour playing this other schedule. So you kind of have two tours within the PGA Tour. And it's like if all the top players are playing the top events, like, and then some top players are playing bad, are they still considered top players? It's like it's just that
Yeah, with the
balance
fine
thing.
line. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the PGA Tour, it's hard to do everything. I think Jay's done a decent job with everything. I actually like Jay a lot. I feel like some parts of the exact, like, I think last year I learned on the PGA Tour how much I feel like the actual PGA Tour members don't like the PGA Tour, because they don't feel like their voices
Mm.
are heard ever. Um, and it's like, yes, you want to keep the top players happy, but you want to keep your entire membership happy. And like you might have the top 30 guys you want to take care of, but there's still 200 other members that you still have to think of. So it's kind of having that balance, because it seems like right now they're kind of just catering to the top players and making sure that they're happy. Like this PIP money is basically like, okay, here's money because you're a top player and you're famous, and we're making sure you get paid properly for being one of the top players on the PGA Tour. Um, the tour probably won't say that, but I mean that's from a normal PGA Tour member or like a rookie or me in my second year. That's kind of how I see it. And I think that's how some of my friends see it. It's like, where all this money come from? It's like it's literally just a direct response to LIV doing all this stuff. So like at one point, like all this stuff from LIV is great for the golfer because we're playing for more money and we're getting more compensated. And I think the product is getting just a little better. But I don't know what the future of golf is going to be like in the next 5 years. Like I don't know if the model for both tours can sustain itself. Like I know the PGA Tour has had to go into the reserves a lot in the past year and a half with COVID and also with LIV. Um, but it's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, I think the one thing now is like there's less. Well, the LIV season hasn't really started yet, but they've already taken a couple courses from the PGA Tour. Like Mayakoba got taken by LIV and stuff like that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Kind of glad that the talks have gone last. Like I honestly thought there would be a few players that were going to leave this winter to go to LIV.
Yeah, me too.
So just the rumors, but who knows what's going to happen. So everything's still up in the air. I kind of like how the PGA Tour is kind of going back to a calendar year, though. That's a side topic, but like starting in 2024, the first event will be in Hawaii. And the season will end in like October or whatever. They won't have the fall season like finishing in the fall. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk in the golfing world right now. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's the best golfers in the world, and then you have all this LIV stuff. Then you have like the Asian tour being part of LIV. It's like the Asian tour is basically like the LIV's version of the Corn Ferry Tour. It's like the feeder tour. And now the LIV is like pumping money into the Asian tour, where the purses in the past were like kind of lower, and now they're getting up to 2 to 4 million, which is kind of a lot. It's like basically an opposite field PGA Tour event to play on the Asian tour, which is crazy. So I think it's there's just a lot. I think it's just back and forth. I mean, you see a lot of stuff with PGA Tour University. Like next year, the number one guy is going to get PGA Tour status. That's because LIV took a lot of young guys last year. Like they took some NCAA champions, the USAM champions, some young guys
Yeah.
who are still in college. So no, it's definitely still a battle between those two sides. So we'll see how it plays out. But like I said, like golf, it's good to be a professional golfer right now. It's good to be on the tour with these changes. I mean, just to see how much the purses have gone up in the last, I mean, 5-6 years. I mean, it's not just the Tiger effect anymore. It's just like it's crazy. I mean, you saw the Century Turn champions, like the purse doubled. I mean, you have $20 million purses. The Players Championship will be 25 million. So it's crazy. It's people like thinking like, oh, golfers are playing for so much money now. It's like, well, LeBron James and like some guys are making 50 million a year. It's like when the guys have when guys and they're getting it guaranteed versus like they might not win the MVP, but like Scotty Scheffler like last year had like the biggest year, and I forget how much it was, but yeah, you'll see just a lot of things happening in golf. So it's entertaining. It's definitely entertaining. There's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, and just closing this, I'll get you out of here on tournament week. You won price cutter at 27 under par, unbelievable score. That was your win on the Corn Ferry Tour. What's the best mentality for us weekend golfers when we got it going hot and we're playing well on a good round, we're off to a good start? What's a good way to keep it going?
You need to first off make sure you're not playing with anybody who mentions your score. That's the worst. That's always the worst person. Like, oh, you're 7 under par right now, or like, dude, you're like even par. It's like at 7. Like, why are you saying that, dude? You're not helping anybody. So that's definitely one thing. But honestly, it's like I feel like you play your best golf when you kind of just not going through the motion, but you're just focused on every shot. That's where like you're just playing shots, you're hitting shots, you're having fun, you're just focused on hitting a good putt here, and then it goes in the hole, and you're like, bam, 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 you played 10 holes and you're playing your best round. It's when you start thinking of the results, like, oh, I have a short par five coming up. I need to birdie that hole. It's like kind of not lowering your expectations, but just not having any expectations, like treating every hole and every shot like you normally would. Don't put any extra pressure on a certain shot versus another because they're all worth the same. So I think just having that balance and not getting in your, that's how you get not get in your own way, is just like, oh, let me focus on hitting this specific shot here. I'm gonna hit a high draw 9-iron, and you're focusing on that. You're not like thinking like, hey, I need to hit this green to shoot 75 today. You know, so it's just having that mindset of changing the way your perspective is, and I think that will help amateurs because that's what pros do. Because I mean, once pros start thinking of shooting the course record or whatever, then you start just spiraling. It's like when you're trying to win a tournament and you're like, oh, you think about the trophy in your mind already before you finish. Like that's when shit goes sideways and you might have not over. It's not over till the end. So,
But
but yeah, go
speaking of
ahead.
shit, well, real quick, speaking of stuff going sideways, you missed a putt at John Deere this last summer, and
Oh yeah.
you berated yourself
Oh,
verbally, but
100%.
you collected yourself and then made 3 birdies after that. Like, what? How do you do that? For us.
Yeah, with golf, I mean, I think that's the with one thing is I still get mad. I mean, I think all golfers get mad, but like sometimes it's just like there's a balance of getting mad so you're motivated, so you want to like work hard and you're pissed off, like, hey, I'm gonna play well now, versus like getting so mad to the point where like, okay, I don't care anymore. So it's like that fine balance. Like at John Deere, I was just pissed because I was like hitting the ball well all week. I think I finished number one in strokes gained approach. I'm like, that doesn't happen that often. And I'm like, can't make any birdies. I was playing well that day, and I'm like, I had an eagle putt and I 3-putted. And I'm like, what is going on? I hit a great shot and I come away with par. I was just like, oh, I was mad. But I mean, that just shows. I mean, yeah, golfers are human, and that was a little meltdown there. It was pretty funny. I made sure not to curse because I knew PGA Tour Live was watching me that day, and I was just like, oh. But no, that was definitely a funny moment. My buddies always bring that up. Um, yeah, but
They don't let you
yeah,
go without talking about it, huh?
100%. I mean, if you saw everything, like all the shots from all the PGA Tour players, I mean, there's certain guys that just say certain things and get so pissed off. I'm like, wow, if this was on camera, this would be bad. So, luckily, it wasn't that bad on when I watched it again. Made sure there wasn't any fines from 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 any swear words or anything like that.
Well, good stuff, Dylan Wu. Thanks for joining me here on the pod, and enjoy your week there in Hawaii.
Thank you. Appreciate it.